You're listening to the Gulf Stream, where we talk to fascinating guests that want to make the Gulf of Mexico, and moreover, the world, a more sustainable and more beautiful place. Don't worry about getting bogged down in scientific jargon or academic lecturing. On the Gulf Stream, we break down complex ideas into simple, yet intriguing subjects that will help you be more informed and perhaps inspire you to create a better environment for all of us. After all, it takes people like you to make a difference in some of the toughest issues facing the Earth today. Welcome to the Gulf Stream.
This is David Yoskowitz, Executive Director of the Harte Research Institute for Gulf of Mexico Studies at Texas A&M University, Corpus Christi. In this episode of the Gulf Stream, I talk with the one and only Harte Smith, Executive Director of the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. In June, Harte announced that he would be retiring from TPWD after a 15-year career in the agency. Harte has had an invaluable impact on conservation, Texas private and public lands, connecting Texans with our state's natural resources, and the list goes on and on. It's a tremendous honor for me to be entrusted with leading the agency following his tenure. In this episode, Harte and I talk about everything from his first hunting trip, his favorite memories at TPWD, to our state's growing population and how we can engage more people in the great outdoors. I hope you enjoy this very special episode. I did. Harte Smith, Executive Director, Texas Parks and Wildlife. Welcome to the Gulf Stream.
Delighted to be here. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's, this is the third installment of this that we've had. Sylvia Earle.
Oh, you had Dr. Earle. Okay,
yeah,
wow.
She was our first.
Terrific.
Yeah, and then Greg Stuns was our second one.
Okay, Dr. Stuns, good.
Yeah, and now you and I, and there's a reason for this. Actually, you were on my list before everything else happened, but
well, that's a pretty high bar to keep up with. I'll say that with Sylvia and Greg, and so delighted to be with you as always. And thrilled about passing the torch to you, and so what a wonderful thing for the state.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's an exciting opportunity for me, and like you and I have talked about, for me it's this kind of completing this arc in my career of the science to the solutions, then to the implementation, and being part of Parks and Wildlife to be on that implementation side.
Well, and I love that, David. I think, your background is just very uniquely positioned to help with that, because you said just with that bedrock background in science, and, to me, the Harte Research Institute has just been at the forefront about, how we come up with science-based solutions to real problems, but having science that's applied, it's meaningful, it's actionable. And so, those partnerships have been rich. And so,
pragmatic too.
Very pragmatic.
Throw that in there.
No, absolutely. Yeah, because it's obviously it's not just science for science sake. It's solving real problems. Yeah. Anyway, I've always loved that about the Institute.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah,
thank you for that.
Yeah.
So let's go back though, and I was trying to think of the first time that we met, and I don't know if you remember it.
I must have been at the Nature Conservancy.
You were at the Nature Conservancy, and I don't know, we were at a function, I don't know what it was, but you actually handed me your card from the Nature Conservancy.
I want to call you.
I probably still have that somewhere. I don't know where it is.
Yeah, I had more hair. I'm not sure you recognize me now.
But I think that's the first time that we met. Yeah. And then not shortly thereafter, you joined the department.
Yeah,
so.
I think I was state director of TNC in Texas. You had been brought on as a new chair, in economics. And so... And, had a great relationship, obviously, with the Harte Institute. I remember when that was just an idea, for Ed Harte and the kids, and we're thinking about that. But, even at TNC, we were working closely with the Institute. And I remember the discussion about bringing on an economist and what a critically important role that would play for the coast, and what a gap it was filling. And so anyway, fun how life takes us kind of full circle here.
And then I think early on, there was a freshwater inflows conference down in Corpus Christi, and you
spoke
had attended.
There.
Yeah, you attended that and spoke
when I was
there.
at Parks and Wildlife. I think that was shortly after I started.
That's shortly after you started.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, gosh. I'd like
and
to
think... That's the extent of...
Well, your memory is good.
No, that's it.
Porous. Yeah.
So, and then, we got busy for a number of years. I was doing my thing, you were doing your thing. Our paths would cross every once in a while.
Yeah.
But when I became executive director of HRI, and that's where we really started to
interact more and more. Sure.
And then this news article comes across, or somebody sends me a text saying that you're stepping down, and I was so PO'd because we were just starting to really get things moving together at that kind of executive director level, and not knowing that. This is how
all things work out.
I guess so.
No doubt.
I mean, and I'm so happy to be able to be spending at least the next month and a half, you and I together, very closely working on this transition here at Parks and Wildlife.
Anything I can do to help, as you know. And so, with anything just on that onboarding and, transitional stuff, institutional knowledge for what it's worth, use as little or as much of it as you want. That'll be your prerogative.
There's a lot there. There's a lot there. We grew up very differently in different places.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in Northern California in the mountains and in the valley up there, and you grew up here in Texas, and your outdoor experience, and farming and ranching. And so what connected you with the outdoors besides, being on the land? I mean, what was it that just said, okay, this is what I want to do, and this is going to be my career? I mean, what?
Yeah. Well, I credit a lot of it to my grandmother on my mom's side. She gave me a subscription to Parks and Wildlife magazine when I was 8.
Oh, yeah, you've talked about
I
that.
may have told you that. And really, every year she was alive, she gave me that annual subscription, and I love it. Just treasured it. And I remember my very first paper that I wrote in school whenever I was old enough to do that, was on the plight of the ocelot in deep South Texas. Yeah. And she and my grandfather took me down to the valley. We went to Santa Ana National Wildlife Refuge, and so got to see ocelot habitat and hear biologists talk about that. And so anyway, my first paper was on that subject, thanks to the magazine. My second one, interestingly enough, was also spawned by an article I'd read in the magazine about the Big Thicket in East Texas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that was cool. And but I will say this: I remember giving my paper to Dad and asking him to read it. And of course, you'll love this. He commented very politely. He said, "Well, what it seemed to lack in substance, it more than made up for in length." So, you never saw that in any students, did you?
Right.
I think I had resorted to listing every plant that had been documented in the Big Thicket. Thinking
get away with length and not. I've seen a few of those.
Yes, you have. Yeah, nobody was fooled by that. But that subscription early on just took me to places around the state I wanted to go and see and do. We had a game warden there in Gonzales County that was a real role model, just a great pillar in the community. Went on to be sheriff, Glenn Socklaben. His brother was a game warden in B County, and his first cousin was a dear friend. But Glenn, we just revered. There were a couple of Parks and Wildlife biologists that worked with us on the ranch and helped us with technical assistance and land management advice. And I just thought they hung the proverbial moon.
So you want to follow in their footsteps.
Yeah, it took a while to get there, Dave. I don't know about you in terms of that path. Mine was pretty circuitous, though. I was interested. I knew about it, but it really wasn't until later on in college that I recognized that was a career path I'd be interested in following. Fred Bryant, who was the director at Cedar Claiborne Wildlife Research Institute and was a professor at Tech. I had left school for a period of time, and he really encouraged me to come back and complete my degree at Tech, and so I credit a lot of it to Fred. And so, whether he wants to take credit for that is a whole other different conversation. But how about you? Was there something that spawned your interest? Yeah,
I was thinking, when you talked about the magazine, Parks and Wildlife magazine, my parents, I think it was my parents, had a subscription for me to National Geographic Kids magazine for a number of years. And so that got me, into the outdoors and
natural world.
But it was also, we'd camp a lot, backpack a lot, fish a lot, when I was growing up. Yeah. And that's what really hooked me. Yeah. And, and a circuitous route to get to where I am today. But it was always natural resource conservation. That was always the goal. There. I mean, I've had some, stuff I've worked on in my career that didn't have to directly deal with that, but always came back to it. And then
I think those immersions are important, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then my time at Tech was around water. You know,
Okay,
I wanted
yes,
to go.
that's right. Yep,
I wanted
yep.
to go there, and I wanted to work on energy economics.
Yep.
And my major professor said, "Well, I'm working on water."
Water, yeah.
So
yeah.
you're going to work on water.
Yeah.
But that kicked
Proved
off.
prescient.
Yes. Yeah, that kicked
Yeah.
off a really important part of my career, and is still really important for
You
me.
bet.
You know,
Yeah.
going forward. And I just, my parents were always really tuned into wanting to do some, conservation and environmental work and that rubbed off
Passed
on
on.
me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that. I think that's so important for all of us, in terms of our introduction to the outdoors. And, you think about that, about how you connect people as having a mentor, whether it's mom and dad, or it's a neighbor, it's a big brother, it's an aunt or uncle, it's a coach, whoever it is, but somebody that gets you out into it, you get immersed into it, you fall in love. Maybe it's hunting and fishing, maybe it's camping, maybe it's hiking, maybe it's kayaking, maybe it's enjoying bird life, whatever, but
bird life, that's something I've gotten into.
Is that right? You become a birder?
Well, no. I can identify a few species, but that's, being down on the coast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there sure are a bunch of them down there.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so in fact, we were in your neck of the woods recently. I think I mentioned, out around Aransas Bay, and again, every time you're on the coast, just fall in love with it over and over and over again. And the bird life is so rich and so diverse. Gosh, people come from all over to enjoy it too, don't they?
Well, it's a huge economic impact to the state.
Yes.
I mean, for people all over the world, they want to, punch their list.
You bet.
And so there's a lot of those species that are only coming through here.
Yeah, we got a bunch of them. It's a bottleneck on the flyway. And so, whether it's hooping cranes or whatever, it's a great place to see them and enjoy them.
Well, so let's talk about that. I mean, what's, Parks and Wildlife's role in protecting some of that coastal habitat that's so important for that flyway?
Well, and the department's been involved with that for a long time, and so it's waterfowl and a whole lot more. I'd say some of the earliest underpinnings were focused more on the game species, protecting habitat either for, mourning dove or white-winged dove or waterfowl of all kinds, and working with partner states and agencies all up and down the central flyway. And so, the department has a number of wildlife management areas and parks that help to support those goals. But if you look at, what the department has done specifically on the coast, there are lots and lots of sites the department has helped protect that, the department may not own. Maybe it was helping to provide funding to acquire a conservation easement or support through the allocation of dollars that emanated from the, catastrophic Deepwater Horizon incident to expand the national wildlife refuges there at Aransas or Laguna Atascosa or, up the coast at Anahuac. And so the department is very, very vested in that. And so migratory birds of all kinds is, a very strong focus of the department, and candidly protecting habitat for all wildlife.
Right. It's not just one species.
It's not just one.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And so, certainly there are species that get a lot of attention, single species, and they should, just because of, say, the sportsman's interest in deer, for instance, and what a huge economic generator that is, what a big impact it has on rural lands in our state and rural economies. And so there's always going to be that kind of focus. Maybe it's seagrass on the coast, or oysters, or red snapper, or redfish, or trout.
You brought up red snapper.
Yeah.
There you go.
So there's always going to be that. But I think the department has always been focused very holistically on all of those organisms that depend upon healthy habitats. And so that's important.
Yeah. What what do you think has been the trajectory in terms of conservation-minded citizens of Texas over during your tenure for the last 15 years? I mean, what have you felt?
I think it's grown.
Okay.
I mean, I just see more and more of an interest in conservation-related issues, more of an awareness. I think a lot of that is just because of the accessibility of information, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just with all of the digital channels and social media and the salience of various environmental issues, I just think there's a lot more exposure to that. Now, one thing that's interesting, and it's certainly, I think a challenge and an opportunity for the department, is that as the state has grown appreciably, people's connection to the outdoors and to animals and nature, has evolved. And so, there's always been this foundation for a consumptive interest in fish and wildlife, the hunters and fishers, right? But I think there's a lot of other value sets that are out there in terms of the ways that people connect with fish and wildlife in the outdoors. And that's, either, again, through the way they choose to recreate, to enjoy them in non-consumptive related ways, or how they think about the conservation of those animals. And the department is, right there serving every single citizen of the state and trying to provide places and programs and services that not only benefit the fish and wildlife that the department is charged with protecting, but also the citizens that we're charged with serving and making sure have some kind of a nexus and connection to that mission.
So that brings up this R3 effort, which I want you to dig into.
Yeah.
And this is a national effort. It's not just Texas.
You bet. Yeah.
So can you explain what R3
is?
And there's actually a fourth R. Megan has let us know that there's a fourth R. So can you dig into what that is?
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, and you're right. That R3 movement is really, it transcends Texas. It transcends parks and wildlife. It's a national focus, on recruitment, retention, reactivation of hunters, anglers, shooters, and boating enthusiasts. And it really is designed to help agencies, the outdoor retail and manufacturing community, nonprofits, all the partners really that work in the space of providing, access and services and gear and programs to people that enjoy the outdoors, is thinking about the changing demographics of not just our state but our country, and how do we effectively engage them? How do we reach them? How do we communicate? What's the language that inspires them to get out and enjoy the outdoors? And if you look at the demographics of hunters, they kind of look just like me. I mean, they're white, middle-aged, guys that, kind of have a rural background or some rural background in their past. And so when we think about the sustainability of that, we've got to think beyond that demographic if we're going to serve the diverse citizenry across the country.
You know what is great, though, a great program talking about hunting is the adult hunting
Yes,
program.
The mentored hunting. Yeah.
Mentored hunting.
Yeah, isn't that great?
Yes.
It's terrific.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think that's exactly right, David. And we see this in just a whole locavore related interest, and people are very interested in where their food comes from.
Yep.
And it's a terrific opportunity to connect, in this case, young adults with an opportunity on kind of a field to table experience, know where their food is coming from, a healthy source of protein, be involved in the harvest of it, the cleaning, the preparation, the cooking, and then the consumption.
Right.
And it's great. No. And so it's interesting as you look at programs across the country associated, particularly on the hunting side. Some of the most successful have been ones that are based out of farmers markets, focused on, again, kind of the locavore related deal, and kind of that 20-something, early 30s. Again, people wanting to have a connection to the land. They're conservation conscious, but they didn't grow up with a background like you and I had, in which we were exposed to the outdoors at a young age, taught to fish or hunt or enjoy that. And so that mentored hunting program helps to break down those barriers and pairs guys like you and me, or gals, and then pairs them with young adults, and then teaches them the A to Z of how to enjoy the outdoors safely and legally and ethically, and so it's wonderful. Great feedback on that.
Yeah, I came to hunting as a young adult, and I fished ever since I was could hold a pole. But I came to hunting actually while I was at Tech.
Oh, is that right?
I had a professor who wanted to get me involved, and my first shotgun. This I don't know what it must have been, 32-inch heavy,
a little big.
Yeah, a little big for dove hunting.
Was that what it was? It was a dove hunt out there on the Camp Rock?
And but he got me into it, and he just he took me under his wing, just showed me all along, and that was kind of it for me.
It took.
Yeah, it took.
Yeah.
And so you just need, those mentors to
You do.
bring people along.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's, my dad was ranch raised, and he, all of his association with the ranch was all work, right?
Yeah.
And so there wasn't a lot of time for play. So he really wasn't a huge hunter, but he recognized I loved that. I was interested in it. And David, I'll never forget the first deer hunt we went on at the ranch. I was about 8 or 9, bitterly cold December day. Grandmother
welcome to
the world. Yeah, enjoy this, And grandmother tried to talk us out of it, said, it was too cold and windy, the deer weren't going to be moving. Of course, she was right. But we
Listen to the grandma.
Always.
Yeah.
We climbed up in this mesquite tree, and we were sitting at the edge of this oak patch, and freezing, absolutely freezing, trying to convince myself I was having a great time. And all of a sudden, this big tom bobcat walked out like 30 yards away, sat down in the middle of the sendero, and looked at us just without a care in the world, and I was hooked forever. Just thought, this is great. You get to see, isn't that the best part of it?
That's the thing. You never know what you'll see.
Yes.
That's part of the excitement.
That wonderment. Yeah. No, the
you never know what'll
anticipation.
pop out.
Yeah. I know, and I love that about it. Mother Nature has the best gifts,
So some of the things that I talk about is, the most aggressive numbers put 25 million more people in Texas by 2050.
Yeah.
That's a lot more pressure on the land.
Yeah, and the water.
Yeah. But for our wildlife, land is critically important.
You bet. Yeah.
And so, going forward, thinking about 2050, what is it that, the department's already doing and that really you think needs to be carried on in order to keep those wild lands, working ranches, wild and the critical part of what Texas is about for its wildlife.
Sure. David, I think you're absolutely spot on with the thinking about that future growth, because it's real, it's inevitable. The train has left the station.
Yeah, we're not
to Texas.
Exactly.
No, I mean, and we've been an urban state, really for 60 years. But we do have a lot of wild things and wild places. But 95% of our land, at least on the terrestrial side, is privately owned.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to be successful conserving it, protecting it, enhancing it, taking care of this public resource that everybody gets to enjoy, even if that's just knowing it's there, we're going to have to work, on a voluntary fashion with private landowners and incentivize them. And I think one of the best things the department has done from a state fish and wildlife agency is having a team of wildlife biologists across the state whose primary and overarching responsibility is to work voluntarily with private landowners on wildlife management plans, learn what their goals are, what they want to accomplish, and help provide assistance. And so, right now the department has roughly 30 million acres under wildlife management plan. That's roughly 20% of the state.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, also, David, indicative of the interest of landowners that have rural land. They're interested in the outdoors. They're interested in nature. But on the flip side, we lead the nation in the amount of rural land, farm and ranches that are lost to development.
Yeah.
And that's an auspicious metric. And so, programs like the department houses on the Texas Farm and Ranchland Council, where we provide grants to land trusts to buy conservation easements from willing sellers of those easements to protect farms and ranches, is going to be critical. And so there's a lot.
So has that picked up? Has that momentum picked up
Yes.
in interest on the landowner side?
Yes.
To get conservation easements and other. Okay.
It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. That's a big decision. It's a permanent one.
Yeah.
And so people need to tread cautiously and think very thoughtfully about what their goals are. But we've seen an explosion of interest in that. I think there's 30 or 40 land trusts around the state doing some terrific work. But whether they are preserving that land through conservation easements or just providing assistance to landowners to help meet their management goals from a habitat perspective, a game, a non-game, a nature, outdoor use and enjoyment is huge.
Yeah.
Flip side is making sure that the majority of our citizens, our neighbors, those who live in our state, can understand and appreciate that the fish and wildlife in our state largely reside on those private lands. And so making sure that that connection is there and they get that, it's where the raindrops fall and the source of the water that we drink, the clean air, the fish and wildlife, most of the recreational opportunities. And I think that will continue to be a challenge as our state continues to grow and people become more and more detached from any kind of a connection to a rural land background or experience.
Yeah. So the department's job is even becoming more important.
Yeah, as a bridge.
As a bridge to the future. Yeah.
Critical.
Yeah, I mean, my appreciation for what private lands can do for conservation on this. I've been fortunate to be able to, partake beyond private land, see what landowners are doing. Stewardship. Yeah, absolutely. So I've seen it firsthand. And but you're right. We need to connect more people to that.
Yes.
Thinking about what that looks like going forward.
I think it's critical as we think about all those public values that emanate from private lands and make sure, again, the clean air that we breathe, the clean water that we drink, the wide open spaces that we enjoy, the wildlife that we, care about, whether we hunt or not. It's just most people have some kind of a intrinsic appreciation for that. But in Texas, most of that is on private lands.
Yeah.
Now, the flip side is, we do have a fair amount of public water. And, and those are opportunities,
yes, we do.
To connect people to fish and boat and kayak and paddle and get out and enjoy that, whether it's on the bay or the Gulf or a lake or a creek or a river or whatever. And also it's a great opportunity around where people live, small lakes, urban lakes, community fishing lakes. And so I think the work that the department does on grants to communities for local parks and paddling trails and boating access and hike and bike trails and fishing access related spots can touch a lot of people in terms of helping them connect them to that part of the outdoors and consistent with those R3 goals.
Well, and something that you keep bringing up is these partnerships.
Yeah.
That Parks and Wildlife isn't doing it alone. There's a lot of partners in this. And this, I love this quote, and I'm paraphrasing here, but I think it was Truman said this, and I think Reagan said, and others have said this, that it's amazing how successful you can be if you don't care who gets the credit.
Yeah.
I mean, now granted, you want the credit, but but you don't have to do it all alone. I think
it shouldn't and can't. Yeah, it's too big.
Yeah,
it's too big. It's too complicated. It's multi-layered. You need partnerships at every level. Yeah. Government is not the be-all, end-all. And the reason I think the department has been successful is because of a recognition of that. Is whether it's a private landowner partner is helping to support their stewardship of their land, whether it's partnerships with universities, like A&M Corpus and the Harte Research Institute to generate science to help inform and guide management decisions, partnerships with Ducks Unlimited or CCA to restore waterfowl habitat or to protect our coastal habitats. All of that, David, to me is essential and critical and imperative if we're going to achieve, goals about conservation, but also providing outdoor recreational opportunities. And that synergy and leveraging strengths, I think it's a success. The key to success for sure.
Good.
Yeah.
So Texas Parks and Wildlife, a unique model that really maybe doesn't exist anywhere else in the country. Can you talk about the value in that?
Yeah, I see.
And the challenges.
And the challenge. Sure. No, and I see huge strengths in it. And states organize their fish and wildlife in parks and marine programs and law enforcement very differently. There's all kinds of models that are out there, and there are a few states like Colorado Parks and Wildlife, which recently merged those departments together in, let's say, the last 5 or 6, 7 years. Montana has that. We've had that since 1963. So we've had a long history with it, and I think it works great, because, parks are so outwardly facing. 10 million people come to the parks every year, and so it provides a lot of visibility for the department. But it also creates synergies with, the fish and wildlife biologists and managers to be able to work on those public lands, reach larger audiences, having the law enforcement team part of the agency is also critical, just because that's a critical part of the, the multi-legged stool for which, we take care of fish and wildlife. And so, sure, there are challenges with funding and some of the money not being fungible in a lot of different constituencies, not all of whom agree about how things ought to be done, and that's fine. It reflects the plurality of our state.
Yeah.
But overall, that integration, the synergy, the different strengths of that, I think really help foster more opportunities for conservation, more opportunities for recreation, and also more opportunities for public support. And particularly as we talk about notions of recruitment and retention and reactivation and relevancy to people from, different places and diverse backgrounds. David, I see it as a huge, huge strength. But it is unique. Not singularly unique, but it is unique. The scale and size and the fact that we've got a big coast, and that responsibility tends to make it more unique than other places.
Right.
But overall, a huge value add to the mission and the work in our state.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, one of the things that excites me about this job is the fact that parks is
part of it.
Part of it.
Yeah. And here you are. I mean, you're coming on board, and you're going to be helping to lead and celebrate the centennial. What a deal.
Yeah, I know.
What a deal.
Amazing,
100 years of that.
Yeah.
And of course, remember when the National Park System turned 100 a few years ago? Ken Burns did that wonderful documentary and a year-long celebration of those treasures. I'm so happy for you to be coming into this position where you and the department are going to have a chance to celebrate just a huge milestone.
And you're going to be around. We're going to be pulling you back. We're going to be pulling you back into some of that.
Well, listen, I'll be hiking on the trails, keeping out.
And you'll be writing me saying, "Hey, this trail needs some work, David."
Right, exactly. No, you don't have to worry about advice from the cheap seats. You're safe from me on that. I can't promise you from others, but at least from me, you'll just have a fan cheering from the sidelines.
So I want to close out with a couple of things. The first is some of your, best memories that being in this position for the last 15 years. I mean, I know there's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have some that stand out? I know you've probably been asked a lot about this lately.
Well, it's pick a space, pick a specter, pick a topic. It's just it hadn't all been all blue skies and blue bonnets. There's no doubt about that. I will say the securing the constitutional dedication for the park funding was huge. Because it was such a big lift. It was really a decades-long push and aspiration by so many. But then to see the people of the state turn out just so overwhelmingly to support that was a wonderful reaffirmation of what you just said about your excitement for the parks and that part of the work that you'll be doing leading the agency. And it was a good reminder about how much the public cares about this stuff and the value they put it on. So I have to say that was incredibly exciting. I'll pick a couple other things. The acquisition of the Powderhorn Ranch was pretty special. It's just not every day you have a chance to do something that impactful. Partnership, terrific public-private partnership. You think about the opportunity to protect 10 miles of frontage along Matagorda Bay and Powderhorn Lake and oyster reefs and seagrass beds and this amazing coastal prairie and habitat for hooping cranes and redhead ducks, and then all of the terrestrial game species that are associated with it. And then, candidly, not only the protection, but the stewardship that has ensued from our biologists and the work of the Parks and Wildlife Foundation. Just amazing, the work that's happened.
Partners.
Yeah. And then the public gets to enjoy it.
Yeah.
The fact that it's open, most of it's open now as a wildlife management area, in a just a very sought after public hunting destination. And then in a few years, you'll be opening the state park side of that, and people will be able to enjoy that shoreline and those wind-swept and sculpted oaks, fish, hike, bird watch, enjoy the night skies. What a gift.
Yeah.
What a gift.
Mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes on the coast. Take your repellent.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Small
right.
price to pay for beauty on the coast.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, things like that, David, to me, very special. And could pick a bunch of those and eat up your entire podcast with that in the next 10.
Yeah.
But, something that I've treasured about this job is to get to see and experience so many wonderful things, visit virtually every corner of the state, and work with a team that's so passionate about what they do and are so competent and capable. That's just what a gift to work for a bunch of public servants that are so mission driven, so technically proficient, and get to work on something that is generational in scope and scale. What an
That's
opportunity
right.
from a career perspective.
That's right. Because what you've done and your team have done over the last 15 years is going to be here for the next 1,000.
Your kids, mine,
Yeah.
theirs after that, and that's being able to think about that kind of an impact. It can make you teary-eyed.
Well, I mean, this is what I talked about. This is that implementation side that you can actually do something on the ground or in the water.
Yeah. You're restoring habitats, you're protecting habitats, you're working with public and private partners, you're helping to connect people with the outdoors and nature, giving them places to go, making sure the fish and wildlife continue to thrive and prosper, having parks and wildlife management areas, stewarding the hatcheries, which play such a critically important role in producing fish for people to be able to enjoy. And the list is a long one. But
I know. I have the list.
And it's growing by the day.
It's growing by the day.
That to-do list. Well, here's the good news: it never ends. And so there's
exciting.
always something. There's always something. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna end here with a series of final questions that we've asked our previous two guests, and it's partially adapted from James Lipton, who was. Actor Studio would have people come on, and he would ask this series of questions. I've modified it for my own interests, and so these are just quick, top of mind, what comes to your top of your head really quickly here. So the first one, what was the first impactful interaction with the great outdoors that you remember?
Seeing that bobcat,
that was
just amazing. I remember it like it was yesterday. So vivid, so special. So impactful. It just curated a deep love for, kind of wild things and wild places. Just treasure it forever.
There you go. What sound or noise do you hate?
I hate the sound of planes going over me when I'm in the outdoors. I just love the quiet and solitude. Nothing against planes. It's just I'm there for the quiet.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes to get away from that. Even
and as a guy who's kind of loud, maybe I shouldn't be throwing rocks in glass houses.
What sound or noise do you love?
Oh gosh, I love the sound of screech owls. Just treasure that in the evening, and love to sit outside, on the porch or the deck and hear that. It takes me to a good place. The sound of a bobwhite quail whistling is I wouldn't say it's a close second. It's right there with the sound of a screech owl. I just love that call. It just something kind of primal about it. Just makes me feel great.
What is your least favorite word?
Least favorite word, can't.
What is your favorite word?
Can.
Greg Stone's, that was his too, right?
Is that right? I love it. I'm in great company. That's good to know. I hold him in the highest regard, as you know.
What other profession would you rather be in than the one you're in now?
There's nothing I'd rather do. Really, it's hard to pick a second one. If it was going to be something else, and I'll have that opportunity shortly, I'll be gainfully unemployed, I just doing something with the land and the outdoors is very important to me. whatever that is, And so, at some point I thought about following family members in ranching. But I was always the kid that was interested in the bullfrogs and the quail and the wild hogs, and was, kind of worthless on a horse. So,
you were going to be focused on that.
No. But yeah, something with the land.
Yeah. Okay. And then the final question: what excites you about the future?
I love seeing like my son. I love just seeing the excitement in his eyes when we're outdoors. And in this position, I've had a chance to see that in a lot of people that have been introduced to the outdoors of all ages. Yeah. And to me, seeing that kind of fire burning brightly and thinking about, this department and its partners help to stoke that, ignite it, foster it. To me, it just gives me great hope. I'm an optimist by nature. I'm a glass is half full.
There you go.
That's the way I see the world. Yeah. And so thinking about how the future generation will take this and leave it better than how we left it to them, that excites me.
Carter Smith.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, what a treat.
Thanks for listening to the Gulf Stream. If you enjoyed this episode, you can help make a difference in the Gulf by contributing to the Harte Research Institute for Gulf of Mexico Studies research and efforts to create healthier coastal and marine ecosystems. Visit harteresearch.org. That's HARTE research.org for more information. Please note, the views and opinions expressed by guests of the Gulf Stream do not necessarily reflect the views of the Harte Research Institute for Gulf of Mexico Studies or Texas A&M University Corpus Christi. It is our mission to be an honest broker, providing only science-based solutions to Gulf of Mexico problems and other environmental issues. This podcast is intended to provide our guests with a safe and open forum for them to express themselves freely.